Hi, everybody. Welcome to the new normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Like Queen Lisa. Today is a Wellness Wednesday. So we have my friend, Dr. Reg McDaniel, joining us, and he is going to talk about bringing good nutrition into your body when you are struggling with addiction. So we'll be right back right after this.
Introduction. If you will recall, the last time we were together, I introduced you, tried a little more detail about the placebo effect and the nocebo effect, and that placebo is good things that can happen in regard to health based on what you think and believe and what's going on in the mind. And nocebo is deleterious things that can happen because of bad things that you think or don't understand correctly and have a negative thought, and they can adversely affect your health. On the more comprehensive nutrition we've developed over the last 36 years, New Eden, the recognition of this that I put on there is a little statement, never to be taken on an empty spirit. And what this all relates to is that more and more information is developing by scientists that our brain is a biocomputer. And the function of this biocomputer, the brain, is the mind and thoughts and visions and creativity and comprehension and understanding and the derivation, understanding of facts. About 40 years ago in Scientific American, I read a letter to the editor from a medical school professor that said we ought to spend more time and money on examining the placebo effect because there are no toxicities and side effects from placebos. It is very powerful because that's the reason very expensive scientific studies are done with random assigned two populations to be compared, try to make them with the computer as two equally age, sex, degree of deviation from normal is possible, and that the patients as well as the investigators are blinded at who is getting a inactive intervention, say a placebo pill. Many think that stands for false. It's not false. It's what the body can do on its own without the test material that he points out of what links science and medicine goes to try to eliminate the power of the mind to improve health. The third thing he points out is placebos are remarkably economical, and safety, effective, and economical are things that people want. I have frequently said that people really are interested in what can this more comprehensive nutrition do for me? And for many people, that's all they want to know. That people do not want to be biochemists or geneticists or molecular biologists or physician or healthcare provider. And as we get into placebo and nocebo effect, certainly people don't want to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist. However, one of the reasons I give these lectures is that if you look in the dictionary, they say that faith is belief based on a lack of proof. What I'm trying to do is to give you the science to support the function of the mind, that this is not belief without proof, but that there is independent science that has been conducted that more comprehensive nutrition, working with the engineering and design of life that is coded in DNA and the genes or in your chromosomes that controls cellular synthesis of bioactive molecules that run the biochemistry of life. So what your mind is capable of driving your genes to do, you also need to have in your diet the dietary molecules that the cellular synthesis of the genes can work with to put together amino acids, fatty acids, carbohydrates that are either sugars or monosaccharides, vitamins, minerals, and these very unique trace phytonutrients that are in the plants. And if you're not interested in the sciences, but you're fascinated by this, I've tried to, maybe I haven't told you before, but I recommend this Secrets of Aboriginal Healing by Gary Holtz and his wife. Is a nuclear physicist that had multiple sclerosis and went to the Aboriginal outback. And lo and behold, for 30,000 years, these natives have understood, though they didn't have the terminology, that our minds control everything that goes on in our body. But there's no science in that book. However, as I said, that I had read this note more than 30 years ago in New England Journal of Medicine, that the placebo should be studied. And I'm reading this book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he refers to multiple experiments that have been done over the decades in regard to defining the placebo effect that is the power of our mind to improve or either be deleterious to our health. And the only reason I bring this up is that to tell you the reason I'm giving these lecture series is for you to be able to put in your mind, because we're surrounded by a population that believes that if you got a problem, physical, mental, or emotional, there's a drug for it somewhere. Well, the programs are in your genes if you have the proper nutrition to make the bioactive molecules to move you to the normal zone. Because anything out of the normal zone is a deviation of health that is classified frequently as a disease or syndrome. And we don't do anything to treat, cure, or mitigate disease, syndromes, or abnormal health condition. All we do is support the normal function of the cells with more comprehensive nutrition to support the genes that have the programs to move everything to the normal zone. So with that, I want to go to the next lecture, and it will be, to my amazement, I'll have to say, I wish I was so smart that I intended on finding and seeing all the benefits more comprehensive nutrition does when it supports the genes. But this is on the benefits with people with addiction. With that, we'll go to the PowerPoint. I have been amazed over the years of what can happen to improve health with more comprehensive nutrition. And I'll share with you some anecdotal experiences that awakened me and kind of shook up my, I'd say, my preconceived conceptions about addiction. The first time was back in the 1980s. A hospital up in Amarillo, Texas, had a foundation that had money and was considering contributing to the research of Carrington Laboratories to do more research on the active ingredients from the aloe plant. A secretary there had been handling communications between the company and the hospital foundation. And one day she called me and said that her brother pardon me, had been sober for the most months of his adult life. And so, with alcoholism being such a common problem, I began to ask questions. And her brother was a English-speaking engineer, which is a really coveted person in the United States. So many of them are foreign, and English is their second language. So he had multiple jobs, but been fired on them time and time again because of his alcoholism. And then he tried to run his own companies and went bankrupt several times because of alcoholism. And he'd had a series of marriages and children and families, and they had broken up, and it was just a terrible history. And she was amazed that by getting him on because of some joint problems and all, the active ingredient from aloe plant, she realized he had been sober for the longest period. And so I worked with him for several months, and it was interesting to try to figure out what in the world's going on, that this person that had a terrible alcoholism history quit drinking excessively. This was followed a number of years later by I would say, an over 40-year-old female at major meetings of the company that I was the medical director for, that marketed dietary supplements. And with several people around, she would say, I've got to get you alone. I need to talk to you. And I wasn't sure I wanted to get along with her, but this happened at several meetings. We never had a time. So one time I was in this line of telephones way down at the end of it, in a little narrow thing and all, and she appeared at one end and screamed out, I finally got you. And I kind of wilted a little because I didn't know what's going to happen. And so she came up and she said, I wanted to tell you, but I didn't want to do it with anybody else around, that I was Jimmy Hoffa's secretary. Said Jimmy Hoffa Sr., that nobody knows what happened to him. And I don't know, but she said, I started as a very young lady, and because of the people that I associated with there, I became addicted to alcohol, to heroin, to cocaine, to methamphetamines, you name it. I became addicted to it. And she kind of blushed a little and says, you cannot imagine the terrible things that I have done just to get another hit from what I've been addicted to. And said, I got to be about 40, and I realized I was slowly dying. And I didn't want to die. I wanted to be happy and live and all. And I realized that this multiple poly addiction was destroying my body and my mind. So I went cold turkey. And she said, you cannot imagine the agony of going cold turkey after being addicted to so many substances. But she said, I virtually lived at Addiction Anonymous, very similar to AA or Alcohol Anonymous, and said, I went 7 times a day and spent most of the day there trying to stay sober. But she said, every cell in my body was screaming for the stuff all my waking hours. It was just miserable as this went on. Then she said, somebody in my life got me to take this more comprehensive nutrition. And with that, she threw her hands in the air and she said, the monkey's off my back. No longer I'm addicted. And she was just so emotional and all. And certainly that got my attention, that something very good is happening against these bad substances. Another experience was up in Canada and the northwestern United States. You have more of the Native Americans for the North American continent, not only in Canada, but in the area of the States. And at both places, there were Native American counselors that one of their biggest problems was alcoholism in the Native Americans. And both of them had found out that most times they had backache or joint pain in their ankle, their knee, or the hip, and that they could give them more of the comprehensive nutrition and it would help their pain. And they found out the more they took for the pain, the less alcohol they consumed. And in fact, they kept working with them and were able to get them back to where they could go to their job and all. And certainly this practical experience was beginning to grow, and that I was frustrated because I really didn't understand or have any idea about addiction, but it was growing on me. Well, I was asked to speak at a conference on glyconutrients in Michigan, and one of the people on the program was a Colorado internist, and his whole lecture was that the brain makes dopamine, some of the nuclei in the brain, and that it is the common reward pleasure molecule that the brain makes, that you can even inject it or anything and you'll feel pleasure, and that eating causes dopamine to be produced, and that leads to obesity. But it also, people that have a shopping passion and just can't control their desire to buy things, that dopamine is produced. It gives them pleasure. And that many habits and obsessions that are repetitive, like compulsive gambling, computer games, spending binges, alcoholism, illegal drugs, caffeine, sex, pornography, virtually any activity can produce pleasure in some people that is consuming, because there's flood in the brain of dopamine. And that is the pleasure producing molecule. And of course, the question is, really, is this more comprehensive nutrition? How can it be active in this human compulsion? What is the mechanism of action? Could there be a single molecule that brings us pleasure, and that this active allo-oligosaccharide is a molecule that counteracts dopamine or whatever it be? Well, in regard to this excessive activities, a major challenge I have found over my years in human condition is balance, finding balance in life, and attitudes and activities, how you spend your time. And you should have moderation in all things, as I've told people time and again, moderation in all things but love. Love is the only thing that we don't have too much of on this planet Earth. And I guess it's a certain amount of this love that I feel that I wish that I could help people with addiction that's coming out of these things. People are telling me the benefits of more comprehensive nutrition. Now, if you recall, that secretary from Hoffa Senior had multiple addictions, and she was very adamant that this drive for addiction was taken off her back and it no longer exists. And this was growing to say, I need to spend some time on this and figure out what's happening. And thinking about it, what I'd been learning about how cells function and how nutrition is used and how the logic is in the DNA of the chromosomes, that there is such logic and detailed constructive engineering and design that to me it's illogical that there could be something going on that people lose their control and that there is such logic in growth, development, and daily function and operation of the body that it's illogical that there would be molecules that people lose all their control. And what might be the mechanism for drug addiction needs to be thought about. Well, in mental gymnastics, I had been seeing and hearing that nutrition was reducing the addiction drive. My physician wife is an addiction specialist. All her patients are addicted to either heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine. They're less addicted to alcohol in her practice, so that's a more common problem in our society. Well, she uses methadone, which was developed in Germany when during World War II they could not get the opiates from poppies due to the warfare going on. And so this methadone would reduce pain, but they found out it was less addicting to the people they gave it to. And so they have been using methadone to try to get people off of their obsession with opiates. Now, in your addicted cocaine and opiate patients, there are some division of the population. They're low metabolizers, which takes a low dose of methadone if they get satiety. And my wife goes to work at about 5 o'clock in the morning because her patients, if they get the methadone, can go to work and function just like any other person. Many of them, it's very confidential. They're attorneys, they're doctors, they're nurses, they're elected officials that are able to function if they get the methadone early in the day. It's kind of like insulin for a diabetic. But there are also among this population those that are moderate metabolizers that make a little more methadone is required to get satiety. And then there are high rate metabolizers that take a high dose of the methadone to suppress the drive to get an illegal drug. And this fuzzy thinking in my mind is that this is obviously genetically driven, that you've got to have this titration with the amount of methadone, and very much like the story of the sweet peas of Father Mendel in the early history of genetic control of life, that he was able to develop different colors of peas, much like a low, medium, or high metabolizer. I received a phone call in the early 2000 from an Air Force physician who said, "I need to talk to you." Says, "I am taking care of a United States Senator's grandson that is addicted to heroin. And when I got him, he was a very rapid metabolizer, required very high doses of methadone. And he says, I know what I'm doing. I wrote the military plan for how to handle addiction in the military services." And he said that in observing this grandson, that he went on the aloe-based mannan-based dietary supplement for just general health reasons, because his health was not doing well for his age, and that he had observed that he went to requiring only a moderate dose of methadone, and then over time a low dose of methadone. And he says, I can predict he will have no addiction to the heroin drive, and that we need to talk about an addiction study. Well, we talked while he was in the service, and finally after he retired, trying to get something going. But the problem is you can't do any kind of studies, and they're difficult to even get permission to do studies in human beings without significant funds to pay for, particularly professionals or anyone who's going to help you do the study. And the military, when he was there, he couldn't get any funds there. And he said, now I'm in a group where I have to charge every patient I see for my time. That's what people in their physician group get for their income. And I can't see addicted patients free. And so nothing ever got done on this, but this is one of the very positive inputs from outside about the importance of it. And the name of this was Major Johnson, who's now retired. And I told you how he developed the program for alcohol abuse and his observations with the single grandson. And he felt like a lot more needed to be done. And unfortunately, nothing got done. Now, to try to get across to you the importance of what you put in your diet and its effect on your daily living, I got to know Dr. Lyndon Smith up in the northwestern United States. Whenever I did a big lecture up in that region, I'd look out there in the office in the audience, and there would be Dr. Smith there time and time again. And he noted years before that his son would wet the bed predictably on the days they got free milk, eggs, and cheese from the government surplus food for the school cafeteria. And it took some time to realize this, but when there was no government food, there was no wetting of the bed. But when they had this surplus of either milk, eggs, and cheese, he would wet the bed. And he got to thinking, diet can influence body function. And he's shared with me that you ever notice that occasionally you'll see dogs chewing on plants, particularly if they haven't been acting like they have a lot of energy, and maybe they sense their health is failing and they will chew on plants. He said, I think there's a primitive sense in the animals that there are things in the plants that they need and it will make them feel better. And I'll question that possibly in young human beings, that when we're young and innocent, that there's a ability possibly much like these dogs to, and he says, I'll share with you why I really think this, but I think as we get to be adults, we lose this. And he had 20 vials of purified dietary supplement ingredients with a screw cap on. And these children would come to him, and he would take the lid off and have them smell it. And does it smell good? Does it smell indifferent? Nothing happens at all, or does it smell bad? And if it smelled good, he would make them a customized dietary supplement by mixing in powders those vials of which they would say smell good. And from time to time, at 6-month intervals, this would change, but the problems that the children were brought to him that no drug or anything conventional medicine had to offer had been a benefit, they improved. And so he had a practice of customized dietary supplement, and that he was seeing improvements in children's health. And people from not all over the United States, but even foreign countries came to him. And he got to be known, and he was got on television. And lo and behold, eventually someone filed against him as a pediatrician, and the state medical board took his license away from him because he wasn't using FDA-approved pharmaceuticals. And they said by not using these pharmaceuticals, he was defrauding the public, and charged him with non-scientific, non-professional uh, practice. And I might add that we had good laughs over this when the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, known as DSHEA, was passed in 1994. I made copies of it and sent it to him FedEx and said that now it's federal law that supports what you were attacked for, particularly the statement in the preamble at the first of this act that I paraphrase says that science and medicine has been able to demonstrate that more optimal nutrition is essential for good health, to prevent disease, and to restore health. Well, you might add, what more would you want or expect from nutrition? Well, one of the nice things would be that rather than just be in the preamble, if this were in the body of the law. Also, over time, he would get with his 20 little bottles and his customized dietary supplements, everything that we saw with the bulk products that we were providing built around the aloe plant. And we would laugh, we would say that he hunted for the problem with a rifle, the exact ingredients that helped the child. Whereas all we did was provide a nutritional shotgun and let the child's GI tract and his genes and his metabolic activity find what it wants and use that. And it's a whole lot cheaper. And we got similar results. But the point I'm making is that what is in the diet really can influence your health. Now, all of this went together until finally in April 1998, there was an annual conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico on the problem of alcoholism in the Native American reservations. And with psychiatrist Dykeman and her staff, my wife, and individuals at Carrington Laboratory, we presented this scientific poster, which attempts to show, because alcoholism is such a problem in general society as well as the Native American Indians. We'll go to this first chart, that the alcohol cravings as they went on, if you can notice, they would go down by particularly the fifth week, and it continued down. And the counselors with these alcoholics that we had seen in the past, that their depression, their energy levels, their anger and their temperature, and their outlook on life would increase, whereas those negative things would decrease significantly, as you see the bar graphs on mood states, that the cognition, it went from 15 to 30%, depression dropped from 22 to 8, anger and temper, 44 on the scale, dropped to 17, and that the outlook improved. This was trying to show them that the more comprehensive nutrition was influencing the alcoholic. Now, this is a proposed theory, which is opposed to theorem. Theorem is the way something was yesterday, is today, it will be tomorrow. But theory can change, and it's a hypothesis that you feel like it's worthy of being tested. And in the light thing, we have a neuron in the nervous system of blood circulating around it. And on this neuron, there are different, in the center, receptor sites, which you see A, B, C, D. They have a configuration biochemically on the membrane of this neuron. And the proposal is that this configuration A, B, C, D over to the left, that it's a site on the neuron for a micronutrient that's supposed to go in there, and that That's what it is. However, that the alcohol metabolite is partially fit into that neuronal membrane site like A, B, and D, but it doesn't have C. It doesn't provide to the genes the molecule that's required for cellular synthesis to make normal biochemical activity in the brain. However, if you provide the micronutrient that would be available in our dietary supplement, it knocks off it because it fits the receptor better. And by knocking off the metabolite, that the demand for in this case, alcohol is reduced because the requirement that the nerve system was wanting is provided by the micronutrient. And if this is not how this helps the addictive impulse, I don't know what to offer other than the addictive metabolite partially fits into the receptor site, but provides no cellular synthesis role, whereas the actual micronutrient fits it better and kicks off the metabolite. And incidentally, the genes are such that if you are not getting the proper nutrient, it will make more metabolic sites and more alcohol metabolite will add to it, and addiction increases. And that's where we get into the methadone patients that require high dose or rapid metabolizers, and then moderate as you add the grandson, as we were adding the micronutrients to his diet, it started decreasing the genes making receptor sites for the heroin. Well, this is the proposed mechanism of why micronutrients reduce addiction. Now, another big addiction is food. And this really struck me heavy as I started hearing from physicians and physicians' wives and nurses and people in the medical field, which I felt like had a more of a basis to observe what was happening in their body than, say, the general people that would say, I've lost 25 or 50 or 75 pounds without trying. But these people really had major benefit. In fact, as we had a type 2 diabetic in Minnesota that lost 150 pounds without trying, and that really hit me because type 2 diabetics are the most resistive to reducing weight. Now, why might food addiction be reduced? And I hope you will follow me with this because it's a little involved, but I studied what is going on. And DNA is inside the center of the cell, and it's like books in the library that are so important you can't check them out. So that it's the DNA stays in the nucleus. However, just like in the library, you can take a photocopy machine and make copies of these basic texts that they won't let you take out, and you can take it to your wherever you want it to work with it. Well, that's what RNA is. RNA is a copy made from DNA that is also nucleic acid, where the desoxyribose sugar is replaced by ribose sugar. And this RNA can leave the nucleus where the DNA is, and there are two types of RNA. One of the RNAs, and I've showed you in previous lectures that there's a little assembly line in every cell, and there's 3 steps, major steps in the cellular synthesis. And one of the RNA is called informational uh, RNA that tells the organelles how to put the nutrients together in cellular synthesis to make the bioactive molecule. But the other RNA is called transport RNA, and that's why they put a little T in front of the R. And the transport RNA goes to an organ inside the nucleus called the nucleolus and is processed. And amazingly, this transport RNA will go into the fluid of the cell and of the fluid around the cell and interstitial space and look for and attach to amino acids, fatty acids, carbohydrate molecules, units called monosaccharides, vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients, and bring them into the assembly line when they're needed to make the bioactive molecules. There is a audit step in RNA that first inside the cell, an audit is made. Is the RNA made correctly from the DNA? And then once the RNA has been processed, it is also audited again to make sure it's properly made. And I want to hit you with more important, the constructive, intricate logic of this process of what's going on in the cell to create life from molecules that are on the composition of matter chart that have no properties of life, but the cells under the control of the DNA can take these lifeless molecules and put them together, and behold, you have it. Well, let's say that the RNA that's supposed to go out and find various nutrients and bring them to the assembly line cannot find the nutrient molecule that's needed. Well, there's evidence that a message is sent to the brain, basically, eat till you find it. And that is a drive for food ingestion that is sent and drives hunger. And we basically have an addiction to food. And oftentimes there are excess calories ingested, and that is stored in fat cells, but the intricate little phytonutrients to finish off the bioactive compounds, lo and behold, we put those in the dietary supplement that the RNA can find it, and that message that's sent to the brain, eat till you find it, is cut off. And that's why these people that by having dietary supplements time and again tell me, I can't understand it. I have been hungry all my life. I kept chocolates or gummy bears or various gumdrops on my desk, in my purse, in my pocket, in my car, in my office. And now they're gathering dust or melting because I don't have this drive in the brain to continue to eat. I have satiety and I can control my eating habits. And so this is proposed that knowing what the actual DNA metabolism is, molecular biology, that this is one of the major sources of compulsive addiction, food addiction, and why more comprehensive nutrition reduces the need. What you provide for to the messenger RNA, the nutrients that were missing from the diet by adding this supplement, and the message to the brain, eat till you find it, is cut off, and the people can control their appetite. And this, I think, is the reason we had repeatedly people say they had failed at all types of diets all their life, and all of a sudden they've been able to reduce their obesity factor, and they're guided by reduced appetite. Now, I've presented alcohol and excessive food intake as the highest addiction problems in our society, and that's why I focused on them. And apparently, the body requires certain nutrients to be provided, and what I've provided to you just, I think, cries out to somebody to evaluate it and be able to get the funds to try to find out and prove not just what I have given you as a theory of what I have observed. And addiction is a very frequent challenge in our society. And with that, that's the end of the lecture.
Sorry, I had my mic muted. Thank you so much, Dr. McDaniel. I think that all resonates so much with another lecture that you gave us about the sugar addiction. Well, it's sugar and the high fructose corn syrup and how that affects our body. And I know I notice if I skip a day or if I'm not consistent with my new eating, I do notice a difference in feeling satisfied with my meals or different things like that. So um, I'm wondering how much of that tie to sugar craving is associated with the alcohol craving.
Well, I don't have
Food, alcohol, all those.
I don't have the answer to that, but one of the things that got me thinking was because of the low, medium, and high requirements for methadone, and that heroin addicted grandson of a senator, when the nutrients provided, that the drive for the heroin reduced. It really got the major in the Air Force attention, and that this is such a common problem in society. Uh, the
That's
death,
true. That wouldn't have a sugar component. That just has the addiction component, I guess.
Anyway, fructose is not handled well by the body, and it actually induces metabolic balance to store fat and to not be utilized well to produce energy. And it even gives insulin resistance. There are studies done because the table sugar is a disaccharide that has glucose and fructose hooked together. So they have taken chemically the fructose out of the sucrose, and they had 3 different patient populations. One population got the pure glucose for sugar sweetener. Then they had the middle group that had sucrose, which was the disaccharide, that about half of the molecule was fructose. And then they had the third group, which was high corn syrup fructose pure sweetener, which is the cheapest sweetener that they can get commercially. And if you check the labels on virtually anything in the grocery store, they tend to use high fructose corn syrup because it can be made so cheaply. However, in doing insulin levels and pre-insulin levels and measuring insulin resistance in these 3 populations, the glucose did not tend to foster the metabolism of diabetes and fat storage and insulin resistance. Whereas the disaccharide that was half glucose, half fructose, was a moderate influence to support metabolism balance, shifting toward type 2 diabetes. And then the high fructose was virtually like poison to not only diabetics, but even people that don't have a tendency to diabetes too. It induces a shift in the metabolism. And so trying to eliminate as much fructose in your diet as possible is very beneficial. And these different molecules that we're talking about, as you were pointing out, sugars, are very important. And I might add that in the aloe leaf gel, about 40 to 50% of the sugars in the chains that are made in the leaf gel is mannose. And to be bioactive, it has to be acetylated mannose. The body likes acetates.
Okay.
And there are lower amounts of 9 other sugars. But this is not wasted because in the variability of antibodies to tell one human being from another in laboratory studies, as well as one bacteria from another bacteria, that it's the sugars on the surface of the cells that are genetically determined. And also in the antibody against bacteria, the variable N that on an antibody that allows it to give you immunity or attach to a pathogen is determined by sugars. So the other sugars that are in the aloe can be used by the immune system to make better antibodies more rapidly because you have a nutritional supply of these sugars that determine the specificity of the antibodies against different pathogens.
For what your body needs.
Yeah, and we have had just incredible benefits from people that have autoimmune diseases where they make an antibody against their own tissues, and how possibly these various sugars that are in the aloe oligosaccharide powder, all these sugars are present, and they may be involved in reducing the antibodies that attach to your own cells and cause inflammation, swelling, and discomfort and altered function in the spectrum of about 80 different autoimmune diseases, depending on which kind of cell the antibody attaches to.
So in that diagram in the lecture, by it attaching to I can't remember what it was called, but it kind of negates the negative effects of that going through your body or being able to attack your body. Is that how
Well, as
it
we
broke
were
down?
pointing out, that the neurons have receptor sites on them, and apparently in addiction, the metabolic illegal molecule partially attaches to nutrient receptor sites, but it doesn't fulfill the function
Need.
the nutrient is supposed to do. And if you provide the right nutrient, it will knock off the illegal alcohol or drug metabolite. And if you don't have the nutrient, that for some reason the genes make more and more receptors, which increases the level of addiction. And that's why the heroin grandson of the senator, by getting the nutrients for some other reason other than this addiction, because this whole addiction benefit was a total surprise to me. And it only comes from listening to people tell you the benefits they've gotten. And that's one of the things that has been so remarkable about these 36 years that I have been involved in following patients, that the acetylated mannose or ace mannin is added to their diet. A simple way to look at this is that when I was a kid in the 1940s, everybody had a garden or an orchard. And they did not get the vegetables or the fruit, pick them green, put them in on the shelf in the kitchen 10 days to a week before they matured. They left them on the plant, and when you pick it green, the principal molecule in there is chlorophyll. So it's not giving you the nutrients that your cells call for in cellular synthesis. Whereas when the fruit or vegetable matures on the plant, the genes of the plant begin to put the nutrient molecules in when plant attached fruit and vegetables begin to ripen on the plant. And this, in the modern era, with a good example is back in the 1940s, we only had certain fruits and vegetables during the growing season around the markets, probably within about 50 miles during the growing season. What has changed significantly is that the market chains, you can get raspberries, strawberries, blueberries, all kinds of grapes. It doesn't matter what they are, 12 months of the year. How do they do this? They follow the growth seasons along the globe, and they pick the fruits and vegetables when they're green, so they'll have a shipping life or a shelf life commercially, and what you're getting looks good. But the best example that I know of that more people are aware of is the difference in taste of succulent, homegrown, vine-ripened tomatoes versus those picked green, held in the back of the market till they turn red. You take them home and they're tasteless.
Yeah, my dad always called them cardboard tomatoes.
Yeah, and I have been informed, and though I've looked for it, I cannot find the paper, but Rutgers University has very extensive nutrition and agricultural departments. And I'm informed that they have done analysis of the juice from a green picked tomato versus a vine ripened tomato, and that there are approximately 200 plant-made nutrients that are present in the vine-ripened tomato that are missing in your so-called cardboard tomato.
Oh, wow. Well, I guess that makes so much sense when we talk about that energy, in the education that you've given us over a few months now, about how energy really is transferred from the sun through light or frequency to the plant through that green flash of light, and then we ingest it. If it's never given that opportunity really to transfer fully to the plant, and the plant is somehow in some false way ripening, not with the natural sun and the and not being connected to the earth, if it's picked early, then that makes sense that it wouldn't have all the nutrition that we need.
Well, I sit here kind of frustrated because we don't have any feedback or questions from our potential audience. I don't know whether I'm addressing what they're interested in. I'm very much aware that individuals' number one problem or thing that they think about is, what can this do for me?
Yeah, that's what everyone wants to know.
And they don't want to be various highly advanced professionals. They want to know what this will do for them. And I hope that, and that's one of the reasons I gave this addiction to drugs, and I chose alcohol because it's so ubiquitous in our society.
Well, and I think the food thing too, the food makes so much sense because we are in a culture, especially with eating fast food, and sitting watching TV and numbingly stuffing, we're numbing our senses and trying to search for that. I think you used the word satiated state.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're not getting there. And a lot of that may be from our lack of nutrition just at a core base. And so if you're constantly just looking for that stimulation, whether it's from food, nutrition, whatever, and then you can never get to the rest where your body can heal and your body does that for you, that may be what a lot of people are looking for with lots of different things. Also, we're so dehydrated. I wanted to see if I know there was a story when we started the video today, you were talking about the placebo effect that we spoke on last week. And one of the times we had spoke, you had told me about how over the years you've been involved with so many amazing stories, and really, I think some historical things in our country and over time. But I know there was one study or a point in time you were telling me about where they used to use sawdust in, and I may be getting this wrong. If I am, please correct me. But they used to use sawdust in placebo caplets in studies. Maybe they weren't caplets, but they used sawdust in placebo studies. And they had to stop because they found out that even sawdust, because it is plant based, had nutrition, and people were seeing benefits from that versus in some of these like studies they were showing. So just how much we're connected to and in need of that plant based nutrition. Do you remember that story?
Yes, and also it used to be a common placebo that would be given to compare it to a drug would be powdered rice. Well,
Okay.
if you look at the population of Earth, it's about 8 billion now, and more people are eating rice, and it's sustaining life than virtually any other grain that's available. And they found out in some of these studies that the placebo did better support of health than the drug they were testing it against.
That's what it
And
was.
what they didn't realize is they were providing micronutrients that were low or absent in the modern food chain due to new practices. As I say, as a shorthand, what we're putting back with a dietary supplement is nutrient molecules that used to be in the family garden and orchard, where the produce was allowed to stay on the plant until it matured, and the genes in the plant could put the nutrients in there. That's why the tomatoes taste so much better, and various fruits. You sometimes will come by a big stack of peaches that they smell so good in the market, but you take them home and you try to eat them, they don't even taste like peaches. And as I frequently tell people, frozen fruits and vegetables and fresh canned actually have more nutrients in them because it creates a economic value. They used to have to throw vine ripened fruits and vegetables on the ground because they would be rotten by the time they got shipped to the market. But now they can rush them to the freezer, and that's a big industry now. And if you read on television the story of food that made America, it's very interesting to read about or listen to the video about Birdseye and how he developed frozen fruits, and how the daughter of Post went to the trouble of putting freezers in stores and
Wow.
getting refrigerator producing companies to, instead of having a little area where you could just get ice cubes
Mhm.
and maybe 6 or 8 trailers, to have half of the refrigerator be frozen so that you could accommodate these boxes of fruits and vegetables that are allowed to ripen on the plant and rush to freeze, because you wouldn't buy them again if they didn't taste good. Same
Yeah,
with
that's so good to know. We're wrapping up our boundaries book study on Mondays on our Mighty Siren group. And in January, we're starting a raw food reboot with my friend Amy Weir. And I'd love to have you come on that show too and talk with her and with us about some of those benefits of the micronutrients, and knowing that it is more healthy to buy frozen if you can't find ripened organic fruit or vegetables. I guess that would be a good option to
I
get
believe
something with
Eric
more
has a
nutrition.
question there asking me
Yes.
to expand on how correct nutrients block the drug connecting to a receptor.
Yeah.
Well, the molecules that make up a receptor site have charges and actually shape that the nutrient fits into, almost like a key in a lock. And if as you well know, you can have keys made that you can open every door in a building or only certain doors. Well, the nutrient for the receptor site is like a key that totally fits into the receptor site or the lock, whereas the illegal drug or metabolic breakdown product of the illegal drug or alcohol doesn't fit into totally the lock. And when you provide in the diet through supplementation the actual nutrient molecule that the receptor site was made for, it appears clinically like it kicks the illegal drug off the site because it fits into it better, like it's a key made for that lock. And as I said to start out with, this is a theory based on what I would say the fuzzy logic of years of sitting and listening to people that were terribly addicted, and they tell me how oftentimes with tears and all kinds of excitement, they're so happy. They don't like being ruled by a drive-in that drives them to a destructive drug. And you listen to them, and you come up with, there's got to be a basis for this. And of course, fundamentally, what started this is that, as I was telling you about how RNA is made from DNA and what there are two types of RNA. This is so intricate and detailed biochemistry that is supportive and constructive to the process of life that it seems ludicrous that there would be receptor sites for illegal drugs. And so I think the receptor site is, I offer that it's made for a nutrient which the drug partially fits into. But if you give the actual nutrient, it'll kick the drug off and reduces the drive to make more receptor sites for the illegal drug, as was noted by providing the heroin addict grandson the proper nutrients and
and then seeing the decline in his drive for.
Yeah.
So would that be similar to how like a antihistamine works, where it blocks, or a beta blocker or whatever, so it fills that need or that hole for histamine receptor?
Well, I can look into that, but I don't know. I do know that antihistamines seem to stabilize the membranes around little pockets of histamine that are inside the cells. And if the histamine isn't released, you don't get the itchy burning, tearing and all. But if I recall correctly, most of your antihistamines stabilize the membrane that is, it's like a little capsule that has these deleterious histamines in it that cause vascular dilatation and itching and burning and symptoms of allergy.
So it's that's kind of the after effect, instead of like we're talking about addiction being something that precipitates or before. So we're kind of, this would be more of a preventative. By having the nutrition there, it prevents the drive for, or the want, instead of where like an antihistamine kind of stops the reaction after, I guess.
Anyway, I hope
maybe a little different.
That response to Eric's question.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful.
Useful. And we had just an incredible number of people in my past experience that had tried many kinds of diets. In fact, is one of my common comments is that diets don't work because so many people gain more weight after they limit their restriction. But this is a totally different approach by providing molecules that the cells call for and RNA tries to find to bring to the assembly line that I have shown you that's in every cell. And apparently if the RNA, messenger RNA cannot find, well, no, it's transport RNA, cannot find the nutrient that's required on the assembly line, a message gets sent to the brain, keep eating until you find it.
Till you
Well,
find what you
so
need.
much of that is calories rather than the actual specific nutrient that is called for by the genes, which is incredible, powerful code written in the nucleic acids.
Very interesting. One other thing before you go, is it okay to use New Eden and put it like on your food instead of just mixing it with water? Like, could
Well,
you?
a lot of people put it in soup,
Oh,
stews, or
okay.
mix it in mashed potatoes,
Okay. Good
sweet
to know. Good to
potatoes.
know. Yeah, because I just put mine in water and knock it back a couple times a day. I don't mind it at all. It's got a little that cherry tart in it. It doesn't bother me at all. But my youngest son, he's not a fan necessarily all the time. So I thought, well, maybe I could sprinkle it on his food or something.
Well, the
Kinda.
most challenging uses of this more comprehensive nutrition we found was in autistic children.
Yeah.
They don't like the feel of different things in their mouth. They don't like the color. They just reject so many things. And so mothers would calculate if they made a platter, Pyrex thing of Jello,
Oh, yeah.
calculated how to cut the Jello so that they would get a certain amount of the phytonutrients in each little square. That sometimes these autistic children like Jello, and you just carry it along. And I have another lecture about the worldwide research that is going on about the contributions of the friendly bacteria that's in your large bowel and how it processes molecules that are made in the plants that when they're made in the plants, they have a molecule stuck on them to keep them from being soluble in water and stabilize them so that the food supply for the little embryo is not deteriorated from one season to the next, but the bacteria in the gut take this molecule off to make it water soluble so that it can be carried by the serum to the cells. And this special article that was in Scientific American in the spring of 2010 is incredible because back about 1900, the head of the Pasteur Institute was named Eli Menechnikov, and he wrote a book on health and longevity in aging people. And he pointed out, just observing, that individuals that eat regularly yogurt and kefir, which is fermented milk, are healthier and live longer than those that just avoid it. And I frequently tell people if they will put their New Eden in different flavors of yogurt, you can get these little containers that are just, one serving, and you can get different flavors that the friendly bacteria that's in the yogurt contributes to this biofarm, F-A-R-M. They call it like you've got a unseen microscopic farm in your large bowel that contributes to good health. And where I first became aware of it is they had a conference in Belgium on soybeans. And soybeans have a incredible span of different kinds of desirable nutrients. And a lot of money has gone into research on soybeans as a renewable source of nutrients for third world countries where people are starving. And what this conference pointed out is that nature hooks a sugar on the end of the molecules of some of these nutrients, and it's water insoluble. And it keeps bacteria and fungus from being able to consume the nutrients that are in the cotyledons, which support the little sleeping embryo for its first leaf and its first taproot when after this is done, photosynthesis is turned on to get energy from the sun. But seeds and beans and legumes are very special biological structures. And the friendly bacteria, which you get when you take the New Eden and yogurt, and I don't know of anyone, I don't think I've ever seen in the grocery store kaffir fermented milk being sold. Maybe I just haven't noticed it.
I think in some of the like natural stores and stuff they do, but I don't know that they have them in the more corporate stores.
That's a common thing that's overlooked. And we had enough experiences with thousands of people in the previous company I was with, finding out that by taking the glyconutrients from the aloe plant in yogurt, you get a better clinical benefit.
That's my mother had us taking kefir and eating yogurt when we were babies. I mean, that was like, you know, she was a little hippie out in the desert with her girlfriends and doing all the natural stuff. You know, we had to eat, you know, homemade bread, and we couldn't eat white bread. We weren't allowed to eat jelly with high sugar in it. We'd eat natural peanut butter, you know, all those things. So that to have good gut health. And they talk about how your gut is your second brain. There's a lot of studies that they've shown where they've taken actual biopsies from your lining of your stomach, and they've been able to find or have predictors of what your mental health, or not mental health, that's probably the wrong word, but like they would be able to see if you were going to have Parkinson's or things like that in the future from seeing the health of your gut lining. There's all kinds of connections there.
I see that Eric has asked, would higher metabolizing, say, heroin addicts require more of the nutrient to combat addiction? To my knowledge, that experiment has not been conducted, but by taking several teaspoons of New Eden a day, you're probably giving a significant excess than what is just needed. You don't have 100% conversion, but with the standard intake that we have, which is about 3 scoops a day, taken at mealtime, this young fella that was a high metabolizer for heroin reduced slowly down to the fact that the major says, I can see him coming off of it. So I would guess that all along you were giving excess amount of the nutrient, and by getting the proper nutrient for the receptor site, that the body doesn't make more receptor sites, which increases addiction. I hope that's responsive to tell you my state of ignorance about that.
Well, no, I think that's very helpful.
Definitely, as I say, to my knowledge, the experiment has not been done, but I just give you
I think
probably what I think is happening.
You have a lot of experience with this, and definitely all the stories that have poured in over the years and those experiences that you've shared with us. Everyone, you can check out more information. There are more testimonials and more information about New Eden, as well as Dr. Reg McDaniel's book available on the New Eden website, wellnessquest.org. You can find the link in the description of the video below. Make sure you use my link and tell them I sent you. There'll be a little opportunity they'll have there to put my name in, Lisa Davis. And I really appreciate you guys all for joining us. Thank you so much.
Well, I want to thank Eric for his questions, and I wish we had more questions. I sit here in my office alone trying to think of, hopefully, of things that individuals are interested in. And we slowly are covering the waterfront that it seems like all the evidence that I'm trying to write the book now, that the genes are organized to establish balance in the body and all systems. Hans Selye, the father of human physiology, called this balance state homeostasis. And that's what it seems that the genes are programmed to do, much like climate control on your in your house or in a car. That if it gets too hot, air conditioner turns on. Gets too cold, the heater turns on. Well, rather than a comfort zone, there's a normal zone for the biochemistry and metabolism of the body. And I had to go to Europe to go to a conference just on this biochemistry, trying to figure out. We had originally thought we had the greatest stimulant to turn on the body's host defenses. And then we started hearing from people with asthma and autoimmune diseases and allergies improving. And that's just the opposite to turning on and increasing the body's host defense. In those conditions, the body's defenses are turned on.
Working overdrive, yeah.
Regulated. Well, what I found out in this conference is it takes nutrient molecules to make the different steps to turn on or increase physiology or metabolism, but it also takes nutrient molecules to make the molecules to down-regulate or turn it off. And so what we have not is a stimulant or a suppressant, but a modulator that the oligosaccharide seems to support the attempts of the genes to get you to the normal zone or homeostasis. And that's why so many different deviations from normal improve when you add this to the diet. And as I frequently, over the years traveling, I've been to 15 countries lecturing on this. I tell people, you got a problem, physically, mental, or emotional, you ought to try this because there's virtually no downside. This is not toxic. This is supports normal biochemistry and physiology. And there's nothing that I've ever found is 100% except death, taxes, and scoundrels will run for public office and get elected. That's 100%. But we have a higher response by supporting the engineering and design of life as is coded in the genes by more comprehensive nutrition, which this molecule from aloe plant is incredibly supportive.
Well, I think we should make that a t-shirt. I love that you're saying about the things that are definite in life. We can count on that, and we can always count on you giving us great information. So I look forward to our next video. I know you'll be away from us next week, but we'll get back together the following week. So you guys, if you're watching this now, please leave us some questions for Dr. Reg, and you can put those in the comments below if you're watching this video later, and I will come back and visit those during the next show, and we'll get those to Dr. Reg. You guys all take care. Thank you so much. Give us a like and share this video. Get the information out there. Let's get more people healthy and well and on their way to feeling better with micro nutrition.
I'd like to hear feedback from people. Are we in tune with what they want to know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Give us some feedback below. Thanks, guys. Take care.